Hi, my name is Ryan Kennedy. I'm a chef for Brigaid. I'm going to go over some culinary techniques. Today we're going to talk about knife skills and knife safety, some of the do's and don'ts, and really what we're trying to preserve are four main things: safety, comfort, efficiency, and consistency. Anytime you're going to use a knife in the kitchen or anything like that, the first thing you want to do is set up a workstation. In order to do that, you got to set up a cutting board, and there's a couple things that you want to do to make sure that your cutting board doesn't move on you. Some cutting boards come with rubber grips already attached, and for those that have that, like this white board here, this one comes with grips that are rubber underneath of it, and it's really awesome because when you set it down, it's not going to move on you at all. A lot of times those come with hooks like this. These hooks should be faced away from you. And the reason that you know that they should be faced away from you is because this one comes with a little ruler on the backside, and the ruler goes from 0 to 10 right here. You don't want it with the hook towards you, because when you walk by, the hook can catch on your apron and then knock all your stuff right off the table. But I really like these boards a lot because they come with the rubber grip intact, and you don't have to do anything to make sure your board is anchored. For boards that don't have that, a lot of times it's useful to anchor your board with a damp cloth. And then for a flat board, you're just going to place that right on top of the towels, and then when you press down, those towels help keep it in place. I like to make sure that my board is squared right up against me, right up against the table. It's not at an angle, it's not hanging off. I like the flat side of the board horizontally in front of me because it gives me more space. You don't want to be cutting like this because most people's arms aren't long enough to cut all the way up here, and you just want to be able to have ample amount of room for whatever the product is that you're cutting and a little bit of space so that your stuff isn't falling off onto the table. Okay, so now we have our cutting board set up. We're ready to go. Before we get into actually cutting, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the different types of knives that you might use in a kitchen. So right here, this is my little tool set. This is kind of like every tool that I would use when cutting something or obviously peeling something in a kitchen. So this is a chef knife. This is the powerhouse in an institutional kitchen. When I'm in a kitchen, I'm using my chef knife for like 95% of the tasks. This can basically do just about everything: chop, slice, mince, smash. You can break down meat, you can carve vegetables, you can cut a bunch of onions, anything like that. It's really a very, very useful knife, and the one that gets used the most. This is a bread knife. It's a serrated knife to saw through bread without really like crushing the bread. This one's offset, which I think is nice. The blade's down here, and then the handle comes up so that when you're slicing, your hand isn't directly on the cutting board or anything like that. You could use it to slice tomatoes as well, anything with like a very soft flesh, but for the most part, this is used for slicing bread. This is a paring knife. It's really made for like small, intricate work. If you think about like cutting the tops off of strawberries or doing any kind of like decorative garnishes or anything like that. Obviously the blade's small, it's lightweight, it's super easy to handle. Typically they're very sharp, and because they don't get used as much as a chef knife or anything like that, they're not going to dull nearly as quickly. But if you're working in an institutional kitchen and you're cutting 50 pounds, 100 pounds, 150 pounds of something, this isn't your power horse, but it's certainly useful to have around. This is a bench scraper. This is so important, so useful when it comes to cutting any vegetables, because what you don't want to do is be scraping this knife against the cutting board and dulling it. So we use the bench scraper to pick up product, to scrape our product closer to us and drop it off somewhere. And then this is a potato peeler. It's a Y-shaped peeler. These things are super cheap, and they're the best. You hold a vegetable, you peel away from you, and you can really once you get good with this, you can really fly through it. All right, so now that we've talked about setting up the workstation, we've talked about some of the tools we're going to use when it comes to using a knife, I think the next thing is just get into some do's and don'ts. When it comes to using a knife, one of the biggest common misconceptions is that a sharp knife is something that's dangerous. In fact, a sharp knife is significantly less dangerous than a dull knife. The reason for that is because it takes a lot less force to cut through fruits, to cut through vegetables, to cut through any product that you're using. So you want to maintain a very, very sharp blade on all of your knives, on anything that you're using, because you have a better chance of staying safe in that way. You're not going to use a lot of force. If you use force and then you slip or anything like that, you can hurt yourself, you can hurt other people. You're going to damage fruits and vegetables anyway if you're cutting through them with very dull knives. So maintaining a sharp blade is super important. This is a steel. I think a lot of people think that this is a knife sharpener. It's not really for sharpening knives, it's for honing knives. This knife, you can't see it, but there's little tiny microscopic teeth on the end of this, on the edge. And through a lot of chopping, slicing, cutting, anything like that, these teeth get crushed, they get compressed, they get bent to one side. And when we use this steel, we're just setting them back in place, cleaning the edge of it a little bit. If we crush the edge all the way, a lot of times at that point you have to set a new edge, which means metal actually has to be removed from this knife to make way for a brand new edge. This isn't going to do that. This isn't the tool for that. But for general maintenance, for generally maintaining a sharp blade, that's a great tool for doing that. And a lot of times, an easy way to think about it is like this is a 90-degree angle, and then this is about 45. And you're just doing gentle strokes at about that 45-degree angle to just try to reset that edge and set it straight. When you're moving around the kitchen and you're handling a knife, you want to make sure that people know. So you just be vocal and say, knife behind. If you're handing someone a knife, you don't want to ever hand them the actual knife. Just place the knife on the table and let them pick it up. Don't hand them a knife. Don't even hand them a knife like this. Just set the knife down on the table and then let them pick it up. If you're moving through the kitchen, you want to keep the knife at your side, pointed down while you're walking through. And you have a knife at the side as you're walking through the kitchen. Another huge thing is about like where you're going to store your knives. So I think it always makes a lot of sense to have a designated storage area. You don't want them to be in a drawer all piled up with their blades facing all over the place. You don't want them to be in a bucket somewhere. A lot of times a magnetic strip on a wall or a wall mount where the knife itself and the blades are actually shielded from anybody touching them and only the handles are exposed, I think makes a lot of sense. When it comes to washing your knife, for me, if I use a knife, I'm going over to the dish area, I'm washing it myself, I'm sanitizing it, and then I'm bringing it and putting it away all by myself. No matter what, under no circumstances should a knife ever go into a sink full of water. Just dropping a knife in the sink full of water is just really asking for a lot of trouble. At the very least, some school kitchens that I've worked in have had a designated area where knives can go when they're soiled, and they all get put in that area. That's separate from where the rest of the dirty dishes are congregating, and it's just a way to keep things safe. And then finally, no matter what, if this knife's falling, don't try to catch it. A knife sliding across the table, it's falling, you lost your grip, you just get out of the way and you let it go. Don't ever try to catch a falling knife. Don't try to shield a falling knife. If the knife breaks, that's fine. Knives break sometimes, but it's super dangerous to try to catch something with a really sharp blade. All right, so now that we feel comfortable moving around the kitchen with a knife, we've got our workstation set up, we've talked about a little bit of tools. I think a big thing is just like how you handle a knife. A lot of people will tell you that there's a very specific grip that you should use when it comes to handling a knife. And what I'm going to say is that the best grip for you is a grip that's comfortable for you. Really what we're trying to preserve when it comes to how we handle a knife, how we hold the knife, what we do with our offhand when we're using a knife, it all comes down to really 4 things that we're trying to preserve. We're trying to preserve your safety and the safety of others. We're trying to make sure that you feel comfortable with how you're handling a knife and that that's something that you could do with a lot of repetition and you're not going to alter it a lot of times throughout that process. We're trying to become efficient with it. We want to get quicker and we want to be consistent. If I'm dicing onions today and then I'm dicing onions next week, that dice is consistent, and that's consistent because my grip and how I use my offhand are consistent as well. My form stays the same. So safety, comfort, efficiency, and consistency. For me, when I'm handling a knife, this is a chef knife. This chef knife has obviously like a long blade, and then the tang, the rest of this metal, extends all the way down through here. So this knife is like basically balanced right about here. So like if I hold it like this is kind of the center of gravity. I use that as a gauge for how I'm going to hold it. I like to do a pinch. This is what's comfortable for me. So like I'm holding my 3 fingers under here, are under the blade. My index finger is kind of on the top of it, and my thumb is right here, and I just have a little bit of a pinch, and then I'm able to rock it. I have a lot of control because the knife's not top heavy in any one place. If I was holding it back here, for me, the weight up here feels very odd and it feels very uncomfortable. If I was just holding it like this, again, I don't feel like I have a lot of control over it and it's not very comfortable for me. So I use a pinch here. There's a lot of other cultures across the world that have different types of knives, that handle knives in different ways, and what's comfortable for another person might not be comfortable for me. So I'm not saying that the pinch is the way that you have to use it, but for me, it makes a lot of sense, and it's very comfortable. And over time, handling a knife for many, many years, I've become, I think, very safe with it, very comfortable with this grip. I'm pretty efficient at this point, and I'm able to have consistent cuts every time I hold it this way. Now the next thing is to figure out what I'm going to do with this other hand. A lot of times when you're cutting, you want to make sure that you're stabilizing the fruit, vegetable, piece of meat, whatever it is that you're going to be cutting. For me, again, when it comes to safety, I'm trying to protect my thumb the rest of this hand. So a lot of times I'll place my fingers down like this, and I'll kind of grab the produce that I'm using. I have my thumb tucked behind, I have my other finger tucked behind, and I kind of use this knuckle or this portion of the bone on my fingers to sort of guide the knife. And I keep it angled away so that if I slip, I'm slipping this way. And I just kind of slice through whatever I'm using this way. You can kind of, if you're wearing gloves, you can use sort of your fingernails to sort of grip the top of the produce that you're using, and you just make sure that this thumb is tucked in the back. That's kind of the biggest thing when it comes to what you're going to do with this offhand, is like you're trying to stabilize the produce and you want to make sure that you don't cut yourself anywhere. So some people feel very comfortable with the knife right up against their finger. They do this thing called the claw, and they'll have their 3 fingers together here, and they feel very comfortable with this motion. Some other people like to stay a little bit further back, and so you're just grabbing that knife and you just want to make sure that your blade is slightly angled away. You don't have to come directly up against your finger, and you're cutting through things, and then if you slip, again, you catch, the blade sometimes could catch on like a pepper seed or something like that and just slide out. So you want to make sure that you're not cutting this way ever, but that you're cutting away. All right, so now we're just going to talk a little bit about the value and differences between a sharp knife and a really dull knife. Over the course of the last few years, I travel around a lot for work, go to a lot of school kitchens. I've seen a lot of really, really dull knives. And you know, when you're working in a kitchen and you're cooking at scale, sometimes you have to cook or cut through, 50 pounds, 75 pounds of a certain product. And doing that with a dull knife is just not easy. So I'm just going to kind of demonstrate. This is a knife that we got dropped off yesterday from a sharpening service. They drop off knives 2 times a month, brand new sharp knives, versus this knife, which is just a knife that's been kicking around here for a while. Really, really dull, kind of stays in dry storage because it's not really safe to use, but is not, I would say, an uncommon knife for an institutional kitchen. So we just have an apple here, and this is the sharp knife, and I'm just going to show the ease of just cutting through something with this. And then we'll take it for slices. You can see the knife does all the work. Versus the dull knife. We're getting a lot of breakage, more so than actually cutting, and then this part, it's just the pressure that I'm putting down, popping the skin, and then I can cut through the rest of the flesh. It's just not easy to work my way through this, and this is just one apple. If I had to cut, 50 pounds of potatoes or something like that, it'd be exceptionally hard. This is a knife where I feel really comfortable just squeezing it. It can't hurt me, really. It's not much sharper than this bench scraper. I'm not going to grab the blade of this knife. It's not a safe thing to do. So just kind of making sure that you're using sharp knives, that you have access to sharp knives. If there's going to be a lot of knife handling in a kitchen that you're working in or anything like that, maintaining sharp knives is super important.